Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're diving into a really fascinating study about the hidden, messy social complexities of unexpected career disruptions. We constantly hear these glorified stories of the career pivot, someone ditching their corporate job to go follow their true passion. But what happens when that change literally isn't a choice? We're going to look at some eye-opening research from the University of Lausanne that uncovers the deeply relational and surprisingly isolating reality of being forced to start all over again. So let's just jump right in. I want you to imagine waking up tomorrow and realizing your livelihood is just gone. And it's a scenario that is completely out of your control. You haven't chosen to walk away. You're forced out because of a sudden physical disability, maybe a mental health crisis, or your entire industry just collapses overnight. Your whole professional identity is instantly stripped away, and you're suddenly thrust into a totally unknown future. That kind of emotional devastation is really hard to overstate. Just listen to these words from Juliana, a 47-year-old surgeon who actually participated in the study. After being forced to close her medical practice due to her own health issues, she found herself completely isolated. She realized her entire social world was wrapped up in her work. When that work disappeared, her community vanished right along with it. It's a heartbreaking realization that losing a job so often means losing your primary social anchor. Okay, here's our roadmap for today's explainer. We're going to cover the career change paradox, the dimensions of influence, leaving and shifting, exploring and implementing, a lonesome social experience, and finally, building better support systems. Section 1, the career change paradox. Let's start by unpacking a truly fascinating contradiction sitting right at the center of this whole experience. The crucial thing to understand here is that, unlike quitting your job to go chase a lifelong dream, an involuntary career change is a massive paradox. On one hand, it's this highly social, heavily scrutinized process. Your transition is being influenced, regulated, and frankly judged by your family, your former employers, and state institutions. And yet, despite literally all these people being up in your business, researchers found that it somehow remains a profoundly isolating and lonesome experience for the person actually going through it. Section 2, the dimensions of influence. Let's see how this all builds into a structured framework so we can actually map out who is influencing the worker and exactly how they're doing it. Think of this as a 3D mental model that perfectly visualizes the absolute maze a career changer is trying to navigate. On one side of the puzzle, we have the sources of influence: personal friends, work environments, and institutions. On the next side, we have the types of influence. Is it positive, negative, or ambivalent? And then on the third side, we have the moments, which are the actual chronological stages of the change. Basically, every single interaction a worker has during this time can be mapped somewhere inside this framework. Section 3, leaving and shifting. We're going to unpack this chronologically now, starting right at the very beginning of the journey, when the worker first realizes their old life is over. So there are 4 key moments in any career change. First up is leaving, which is exiting the former role. Next is shifting, that super uncomfortable in-between limbo. Then comes exploring, where they actively plan a new path. And finally, implementing, which is actually executing that new plan. We're going to focus first on that highly turbulent jump from leaving to shifting. During the initial leaving phase, the study found this massive, jarring contrast in how people around you behave. On the positive side, workers desperately need and often do get comforting emotional support from loved ones. But on the negative side, they frequently face really harsh judgments from relatives or just totally disrespectful behavior from employers. Take Anna, for example. She's a 49-year-old nurse in the study who was pressured by her director to come back to work and do physical tasks while she literally still had surgical pins in her wrist. It's an incredibly fraught phase. Once they officially leave, the worker enters the shifting phase. Now, this is an incredibly uncomfortable limbo. You no longer belong to your old profession, but you definitely don't have a new one yet. Before you can even begin to look forward, you have to process the grief and loss of your former identity. And during this highly vulnerable time, most people have to turn to state institutions for help. And this brings up the tricky myth versus reality of institutional support. Obviously, the financial lifeline from public insurance is absolutely vital, but the reality of receiving it, it's a total double-edged sword. People in the study expressed immense frustration with the rigid bureaucracy. Beatrice, a former saleswoman, talked about feeling totally stripped of her autonomy because she had to justify every single sick day or vacation to the system. It breeds this deep fear of becoming permanently dependent on an institution that treats you more like a case file than an actual human being. Section 4, Exploring and Implementing. Let's dive into the second half of our timeline, where the career changer finally emerges from the void and tries to rebuild their professional life.
During the exploring phase, institutions actually often step up, providing some pretty excellent career guidance and strategies for finding a new path. But at home, the personal reality can be totally crushing. The study highlights Kevin, a 29-year-old hairdresser who developed severe allergies and was forced to leave his job. He felt this humiliating sense of guilt and massive strain in his relationship just because he suddenly made significantly less money than his partner. That imbalance in your private life can be a huge hidden weight to carry.
So the big takeaway here is that even when a worker is totally ready to implement a new plan, they often slam right into a brick wall. Sure, some secure great internships, but a lot of them crash into crazy rigid university requirements. Look at Louis, a former airline CEO in the study, who's rejected from an MBA program simply because his previous background didn't check their traditional academic boxes. Or they face severe labor market prejudices, like Nancy, who felt employers flat out refused to take a chance on her due to a mix of her age, gender, and background. Section 5, A Lonesome Social Experience. This brings us to a deeply emotional finding from the study, focusing on the hidden psychological toll of all those relational barriers we just talked about. It turns out, loneliness in a career change isn't just about sitting alone in a room. The researchers identified 3 very distinct forms. There's unintentional loneliness, which is the literal, painful absence of your old professional network. Then there's experiential loneliness. That's the quiet, sinking realization that the labor market and institutions just fundamentally do not understand your unique struggle. But honestly, the most striking one is deliberate loneliness, which is when a worker actively and purposefully isolates themselves. Henry's situation perfectly captures this idea of deliberate loneliness. He's a 58-year-old former humanitarian coordinator, and he chose to stay completely silent about his unemployment. That silence reveals the intense shame, the stigma, and the sheer loss of status that highly experienced professionals feel when the rug is pulled out from under them. They isolate themselves from friends and family because they don't want to be perceived as needy, or honestly, they're just exhausted by all the clumsy, unsolicited advice from people who just don't get it. Section 6, Building Better Support Systems. Let's move to our final section and look at how we can actually take these insights and apply them to the real world, so we can genuinely help people going through this upheaval. We can break down exactly what needs to change across all levels of society. The labor market, it absolutely must be educated to drop its rigid prejudices and start seeing the highly transferable, massive value of adult career changers. Institutions need to replace their slow, suffocating rules with adaptable training programs that actually respect an adult's autonomy. And at the individual level, and this applies to all of us, family members must learn to simply listen without judgment. We have to offer real, tailored help rather than becoming what researchers call a benevolent barrier, someone who means well but inadvertently just causes more stress.
So I'll leave you with this provocative question to ponder. We all know someone navigating a tough professional transition right now. Are your words and actions truly supporting them? Or are your own projections and assumptions accidentally making their journey harder? Are you a helpful resource or a benevolent barrier? I really hope this explainer has empowered you to view unexpected career transitions with a whole new level of empathy and understanding. Thanks so much for joining me today, and keep exploring.